And I had really only a vision of a party.
That's a smart way of making music, though. I didn't listen to it like that because I heard the sub sounds on it. Because especially in my car, there is. I mean, if you have a sound system that can take it, it's really something that's surprising you while you're listening to a good song. It's still below there. There is more to add to it. And are there more tracks on the album that I should listen to? Or?
Well, that is the main thing. If I were to speak to young musicians or other musicians, I would tell them that's what I did, because I fully intend on going to the club tonight and would love to be able to hear my song in there and other people's songs that isn't just hip hop. Although I like hip hop,
the variety isn't bad at all.
And as a result, people started to get angry and felt like, I don't want to go out tonight because they're going to play, all hip hop. And I said, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe I can change this up a little bit. And once I do, I'm sure that other rock musicians... See, because the main thing is when you're a DJ, you have to understand today, when you're not going to see a live group, the DJs, you have to beat match to keep the house pumping. And that's really why they've been left out. And then aside from that, if they don't have the subs on their kick or their bass lines deep enough, they don't sound good next to hip-hop. Hip-hop will sound much nicer in the room. And so as long as they can go down, produce down, as well as up, because rock has got a lot more high instruments, the guitars.
Especially it's produced completely full up to the maximum ability.
Exactly. So that's all we'll have to do, and then you'll see that there'll be a beautiful inclusion that is going to happen now in the clubs next few years.
You had a lot of people playing on the album. And in what way did they play on the album? Because it was intended to be a nice weekend party, but I can't imagine having all the guys into a room in 2 days and then do the album.
No, I mean, in some cases, in the case of, for example, Peter Hook, I have only begun to correspond with him recently. This is after having those tracks for 3 years, and I started to feel very uncomfortable that I had not met him, although he's my hero. So eventually I just reached out and said, hello, Peter, I'm Perry. I'm the one who's been boasting about producing your tracks. The truth is that today you get these tracks, you form an FTP site, and you can begin to share tracks from Washington D.C. to Los Angeles, or from
Siberia to LA.
Siberia to LA, if you felt like it. And so that's, in a way, that's a wonderful thing. In some cases, though, in the case of, for example, the 30-piece orchestra, my friend Harry Gregson Williams, who is he's a film composer. He composes for people like Steven Spielberg and Tony Scott. And so we were lucky enough. One day he called me up and said, there's an orchestra in town, and their gig got canceled. And they're all friends of mine. I use these people. They're perhaps the greatest string instrumentalists in the world. And they're all here together with nothing to do. And we ran down to Fox Studios, a big sound stage, and we had to, they had to be conducted. But we got off 5 songs that they got to participate on. And that was a very different occasion. So all that work happened in the course of one afternoon, yes.
Did you conduct them, or?
Harry conducted them, and he asked me if I wanted to conduct them, but I didn't want to fuck things up. I knew I had one day
that's
all those songs. So I stayed in the room and just kind of bopped my head and smiled.
And Betancourt, Mr. Betancourt, you also got him along to play some bass and do some stuff. He also co-produced. Why is that? 'Cause I haven't heard from him a long time.
Right. Well, Nuno is a very, very great musician. When he left Extreme, he wanted to do his next project, and and so as a result, he's not jumped at anything commercial, or he wanted to make sure that he did things right. And there he was, just kind of waiting for the right situation all this time. I was at Tom Morello's house and met him at his birthday party, and my friend said to me, "This man here in the corner is one of the greatest guitar players you'll ever meet." And at that time, it was right then when I was looking to now bring instrumentalists to add on to the subtones and the electronics. So I said, "I have a song I'm working on right now with Flea. Come to my garage."
Hard Life is easy.
Hard Life was the second song I worked with. The first song I worked with was Milky Avenue. So Flea had not really, he wasn't accustomed to working with a programmer with his music. So I was at that time the only programmer. I said to him, let's write some fun things and I'll chop them up and you'll see, what do you think, you know, and just let's have some fun. But when I heard, no, we needed now a guitar player, so Nuno came in initially just to play some guitar, and I liked him a lot, and he was a very soulful guy, a father, so, and his parts really suited the song. I was very, very pleased with the outcome. I said, "Come back." And we just developed a relationship from there.
That's a great part, because all those people do have, in some way, an influence on your music skills, your writing, etc., etc. Because I was almost shocked by the fact that just the part of Flea also writing along, but also playing the bass on Hard Life, it gives the song like a Red Hot Chili Pepper flew completely.
Yeah, it sounds like the Peppers meets Jane's Addiction and then meets Satellite Party. So. Yeah, you have to understand that when I began to write, I had no record company. And I had really only a vision of a party and all the time in the world to develop this. And I didn't know if it would ever really happen. So that's why you have to understand, in the old days, in the great days of music, people would take 2 years. They would show up maybe 2-3 years later with their album. They don't do that today because record companies are pushing them
In a hurry.
in a hurry, and they don't even wait a year before they have another record. Not only that, you'll find that they don't even usually have 2 good songs on those albums. Whereas in my foolish way, I want to call myself somewhat foolish, because every day that you're not out there performing or selling, you're losing money.
Yeah, in a way.
Well, yes, in a way, exactly. My hopes and dreams were that eventually I'm going to give a beautiful product, a beautiful body of work, and then I will lock in and be able to tour behind this body of work. And I shoot for the long term.
I think it's a more healthy way of working.
I look at it like sex. You have a quick comer, and you have someone who builds and builds and pets and strokes. That was my way, and that makes for a deeper, deeper orgasm.
Yeah. And what is the orgasm? Just the fact that it's in the shops for sale, or the fact that Satellite Party has been started in February playing live?
I don't look to make any money off of the shelves. I don't know how many people will buy the record. I know that everyone's iPods will have the record, for sure. And then from there, I will go out and do it the old-fashioned way, the way of the troubadour, the way of the gypsy. I will go out and perform for years. And that is
something you really can. People will also know you because, of course, of the fact for Jane's Addiction, which started in the end of the 80s. I really thought yesterday, well, one of my favorite albums ever is Ritual, which came out in 93. I thought, it's 14 years ago already.
Came out in 90.
90?
Yeah.
17 years ago already.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. How do you look back on so many years in which you did so many different things? I mean, you did the Lollapalooza stuff, you did the Jane's Addiction, you came back a few years ago with Jane's Addiction, you keep on going in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I improve myself because I get wiser. And the arts are one where you can improve yourself. Unlike an athlete, there's a certain height that you hit, and that's unfortunate, but those that use their mind, I think, as they say, the mind is the last thing to go. So you can continue to gather information and develop if you are somewhat of a cerebral, if your business is cerebral. I like to shoot for the long term and the grand and the majestic, and that takes a long time to set it up. But once it happens, it can become historic.
And talk about one of the historical parts on the album is the last song with Jim Morrison. How did you? I mean, you got to think of it, and then you got to do it. Also, how did you get it?
Well, how I got it was just by me knowing the Doors and the Doors management for many years and performing with them on occasion. Of course, they need a singer, right? And the tracks came to me, and working with them and the brothers and sisters of Jim and his family, and it took me a while, but when they heard the music and they heard where the music was going to be placed, in part, they all liked the idea. I've given this track, "The Woman in the Window," to Global Cool to use for their campaign.
So it's gonna be heard.
It sure will be heard, and when they all heard where it was going to be, they just said, "Yeah, absolutely, you've got my consent." So
it's an unbelievable combination of your music and the voice of Jim Morrison. It's so unbelievable and so different from the Doors sound that you can't stop thinking, well, it doesn't even sound like Jim Morrison because of the fact the combination of the music is so strange.
But it's I by design, I feel that if I were to imagine Jim Morrison today, he would, as an artist, he wants to develop the way that I want to develop. So I put him in a situation, or his sound and his voice in a situation where I would like to be. And that's where I'd like to be. I would like to be playing with musicians, but I'd also like to be being playful with the electronics and being able to be played in the clubs. And that's where he could be played now.
And that's where this album has turned out to be so great in, because it's a combination of all the things you wanted.
Yes, I look very forward to the next few years, and I feel by the third year, I would like to see this develop to a film, whether it be a documentary film or I guess you'd say a fiction or a fantasy fiction. And even to go further, I would like to see this developed into a play, theater.
There is a possibility in it, because
that was my intention. Now, after when I had the story fully fleshed out, I had to make a choice, and my choice was either to go straight to try to make it a film, or first
start with the soundtrack of the film.
Start with the soundtrack, and I chose the soundtrack. Although it's a longer journey, but I used the Who as the concept of Tommy, where they are a rock band and they go out and they perform it, and then it seeps, and it starts with a very subtle energy of sound and ear. People begin to acquaint with it, and then they want to eventually look forward to seeing it developed as film, rather than you could do it another way where, I look at 50 Cent and what he did with Get Rich or Die Hard Trying, or Die Trying, and he didn't have a chance. People didn't have a chance to develop the songs, and so when the film didn't happen and didn't work out, everything stopped.
Taking risk.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for doing this interview.
My pleasure.